This is Northern Light for Monday, June 29th. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. A research lab at Paul Smith College was awarded $1 million in state funding to study Adirondack lake and stream health.
Sometimes you kind of take for granted. You just think, beautiful lake, people go in, people go out, boats go in, boats go out. But then you realize there are things that we need to be aware of, ways we need to try to protect our waterways.
Also on the show, lawmakers and policy analysts are reacting to primary results last week, including how the candidate who President Trump endorsed beat a fellow Republican in the North Country.
He is, for better or worse, able to direct endorsements to electoral outcomes.
And a religious order that was founded nearly 200 years ago is coming to an end. We have a conversation with one of its leaders about what it means to be working toward completion.
All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us. Support for Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio comes from the Adirondack Artists Guild on Main Street in Saranac Lake, a gallery of 15 local artists bringing fine art to the Adirondacks for over a quarter century. AdirondackArtistGuild.com. And from the Lake Placid Sinfonietta, live orchestral music in the heart of the Adirondacks from July 8th through August 16th. Performance schedule and more at lakeplacidsinfonietta.org. This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. A family in Clinton County is suing the Plattsburgh YMCA over allegations their child was abused at the organization's daycare center. Kara Chapman has more.
The child care center, owned by the Plattsburgh YMCA, is called Bright Beginnings. It's been operating for almost 3 decades. But back in March, the state suspended Bright Beginnings' license after complaints of physical abuse and inappropriate discipline by staff were substantiated. Multiple violations were found, including corporal punishment and failure to report abuse in a timely manner. A new lawsuit filed in Clinton County Supreme Court last week offers more details behind those allegations. It was brought by the family of a now 2-year-old who first enrolled at Bright Beginnings in September. They say she was, quote, subjected to repeated acts of physical abuse and maltreatment by Dylan Bronson, who was an assistant teacher at the center. The lawsuit says at least 3 incidents were caught on video surveillance. Each time, Bronson allegedly grabbed the child and others, quote, by their legs and ankles, violently whipped the children up and then down onto their sleeping cots, and then covered their heads and bodies with blankets. New York City-based attorney Andrew Stengel, who's representing the little girl and her parents, spoke with WCAX Channel 3 News.
There was a pattern of shocking, unconscionable child abuse and maltreatment, not only against my client's daughter, but a whole lot of other children.
The lawsuit claims that, according to state police, all 10 children in the classroom experienced similar treatment. Bronson's coworkers allegedly witnessed dozens of acts of child abuse and maltreatment, but failed to report them. Stengel said he and his clients believe top management at the Plattsburgh YMCA knew about Bronson's alleged actions, and that demonstrates negligence.
The higher up you go, the more responsibility you have. And if a high-level administrator at Bright Beginnings of the YMCA knew about the child abuse and maltreatment, they should have reported it immediately and put a stop to it, and we believe that did not happen.
The lawsuit says the child, quote, suffered and continues to suffer severe physical and psychological injuries. Her family is seeking a jury trial and damages. Bright Beginnings was temporarily shut down after the state suspended its license in March. The lawsuit says Bronson and several other employees were fired, including the organization's chief executive officer. The YMCA's board of directors has since brought on an interim CEO. Bright Beginnings reopened last month to families who'd been enrolled prior to the shutdown and needed childcare. In a statement, the YMCA board said it was reviewing the lawsuit with legal counsel and was unable to comment further. The group added that, quote, the safety and well-being of the children entrusted to our care remains our highest priority, and we remain committed to rebuilding the trust placed in this organization by the families we serve. The board also said it has continued cooperating with authorities investigating the allegations. The Clinton County District Attorney's Office said in an emailed statement Friday that it can't comment on pending investigations. A state police spokesperson did not return a request for comment. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio.
A retired sergeant with the Essex County Sheriff's Office is facing dozens of charges related to the promotion and possession of child sexual abuse material. 57-year-old Albert Leon of Jay was arrested last week following a joint federal and state investigation. State police executed a search warrant on Tuesday, then charged Leon with 54 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. Leon also faces one federal charge of, quote, transportation of child pornography. CNY Central is reporting that investigators recovered more than 100 videos of child sexual abuse material from his phone.
Leon was a patrol deputy in Essex County for more than 2 decades and retired as a sergeant about 2 years ago. He was jailed following his arrest and is in supervised custody with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. The investigation remains ongoing. Anyone with additional information or who believes they may have been a victim is asked to contact state police at 518-873-2750.
A research lab in the Adirondacks was awarded $1 million in state funding. The Adirondack Watershed Institute conducts research and runs a summer stewardship program at boat launches across the park. Democratic Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie and Assemblyman Michael Cashman toured AWI last week before announcing the state funding. Emily Russell reports.
The Adirondack Watershed Institute sits on the shores of Lower St. Regis Lake. It's part of Paul Smith's College. On a recent warm summer day, AWI's executive director Maureen Cunningham led a tour of the Institute for Assembly members Carl Hastie and Michael Cashman.
And we'll go downstairs to the lab.
AWI has been around for decades. They monitor about 200 lakes in the Adirondacks, which equates to about a third of the park's watershed. Hastie and Cashman filed into the first floor lab. AWI's Leah Treybergs gave the two a rundown of some of their research.
We are aiming to collect water quality data on lake and stream health, focusing on legacy and emerging threats like harmful algal blooms, acid deposition, road salt impacts, and climate change.
The Adirondacks are warming at a faster rate than the global average. Winters are getting shorter and milder, and summers are getting longer and hotter. One result of that is the algal blooms that Treybergs mentioned. They're popping up in places like Lake Champlain, and they can make the waters toxic for people, pets, and other animals. Hastie, who represents part of the Bronx, asked what could be done about it.
Is there a treatment for the lakes? What's the response when you find that the algae blooms are...
So there's not much in terms of immediate management that can be done.
The key, Treyberg said, is to follow the state's advice. Know it, avoid it, report it. The D.C. has an online form that people can fill out to report harmful algal blooms.
So now we're going to move into the working lab.
Hastie and Cashman gathered around a student lab tech wearing a white coat. Noah Rayberg used a syringe to pull a water sample from a plastic cup and then deposit it into little glass jars.
Yeah, so I'm filtering for DOC, which is dissolved organic carbon, and also anions and cations.
He's essentially preserving the water samples so they can be analyzed later on. After a few more stops along the way, the group headed outside for the grand finale. A man in a light blue vest powered on the big yellow water pressure tank. It's what AWI's watershed stewards use at more than 60 boat launches across the park. They flush out boat engines and power wash hulls to prevent the spread of invasive species. The stewardship program employs more than 100 people each summer. It's managed by Brett Wimsat. Hastie asked Wimsat what happens if stewards do find invasives.
It doesn't take a lot.
So when you find them, what do you do?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, so we have these 120 watercraft inspection stewards. So the first thing is inspection. And if we can just find it, a lot of times we've found these already on half a dozen different boats at 2 or 3 different launches this summer.
Wimsat says it's key to catch invasive species like water chestnuts or Eurasian water milfoil before boaters launch into Adirondack waters.
Once it arrives, we're looking at $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 worth of management each year to keep up with dive teams or benthic barrier matting or potential chemical treatments, whatever it might be. So being able to stop it before it arrives, that's the best use of every single dollar.
AWI has a 5-year, $13 million contract with the DEC to operate its boat inspection sites. At the end of the tour, Hastie said it was pretty eye-opening to tour the lab and to learn about AWI's efforts to stop the spread of invasives.
Sometimes you kind of take for granted. You just think, beautiful lake, people go in, people go out, boats go out. But then you realize there are things that we need to be aware of, ways we need to try to protect our waterways and our beautiful lakes and rivers.
Democrats control both the state assembly and Senate, so a collaboration between Hastie and Cashman really matters for this region. Cashman, who was elected just last year, is the North Country's only Democratic lawmaker in Albany. He says these kinds of visits by Hastie in the Adirondacks can make a big difference in budget talks back in Albany.
So when we're having conversations during session and we're advocating, he goes, yeah, I've been to that district. I've seen it. I've touched it. I've talked with your people.
The Adirondack Watershed Institute says it plans to spend the $1 million in state funding on new lab equipment and facility upgrades. AWI says a more modernized lab will help its scientists and lab techs better keep track of the changing climate and environment in the Adirondacks. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio, Paul Smiths.
This is NCPR. You're listening to Northern Light, only here on North Country Public Radio. It's just about 8:13. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Stick around. We'll talk with one of the leaders of the Edmundite Religious Society about how the order is coming to an end.
That conversation is coming up in just a few minutes here on Northern Light. First, let's hear a little bit more music from Zoe Knight out of Potsdam. Support for the station comes from the Adirondack Experience, the museum on Blue Mountain Lake, presenting natural beauty, the art of rustic furniture, a temporary exhibit currently on display, the adkx.org. And from AJA Architecture and Planning in Glens Falls, providing architecture, planning, and interior design services for residential, commercial, and community spaces throughout the North Country, ajaarchitecture.com.
An immigration law in New York is being challenged at the federal level. The suit focuses on rules the state lawmakers put in place for immigration and customs enforcement agents. And state lawmakers and top policy analysts are also reacting to the primary results from last week, which delivered big wins to some progressive candidates. The New York Public News Network reporters Jimmy Vielkind and Samuel King break down the latest in state politics.
Hi, Samuel.
Hi, Jimmy.
Before we get to the election, I want to talk about immigration quickly. The Supreme Court ruled that immigrants from Haiti and Syria who had temporary protective status can be deported. Democratic officials say that could hurt the economy, as many of these immigrants are authorized to work in New York. But there was also a new lawsuit filed over New York's new immigration law. What's in the challenge?
The Justice Department says Albany lawmakers overstepped with the new immigration protections enacted last month. Two big provisions are at issue. The first restricts when law enforcement officers, including ICE agents, can wear face masks while on duty. The second prohibits formal cooperation agreements between ICE and law enforcement in the state.
What's their argument?
Well, federal officials point to the part of the Constitution called the Supremacy Clause, which basically says that state law can't trump federal law. Here's John Sarcone, a Trump-appointed prosecutor in Albany.
There's the state, there's a federal system. Federal law enforcement has a right and duty to do their job.
What do Democratic state officials say?
Well, Governor Hochul and Attorney General Letitia James held an event to say they want the law to go into effect. Hochul says those cooperation agreements should be struck down.
The agreements also say that they must follow state law. That is where we are able to step in and say our state law now prohibits them. That is why we'll be successful in court.
Well, that's certainly something we'll be keeping an eye on.
Yep. But let's talk about these election results. Some of the highest profile races were on the Democratic side and in New York City. What happened?
Well, 3 progressive challengers backed by Mayor Zohran Mamdani won seats in Congress. 2 of those victorious candidates are members of the Democratic Socialists of America, and 2 of the people who lost were incumbents. I spoke with Fordham political science professor Christina Greer about her takeaways.
The Democratic Party needs to take notice on what they're doing in Washington, D.C. and in Albany, and making it clear to their voters that they're still relevant and working for them and not just becoming, watered down Republicans from the past.
Now, the DSA is very bullish. Leaders are already talking about picking new targets for 2028.
And Jimmy, let's not forget about some other upstate wins for the DSA. Adam Bojack won a state assembly primary with the support of DSA out in Western New York. Another DSA-backed candidate, Mo Brown, is neck and neck with longtime assembly member Bill Magnarelli in Syracuse.
I really wonder, though, if those kinds of results will scale outside of urban areas. For example, Comptroller Tom DiNapoli easily won a statewide race against 2 progressive challengers, Drew Warshaw and Raj Goyal.
Very interesting.
And in the lower Hudson Valley, 2 moderate Democrats took around 80% of the vote in a primary over who would get to challenge Republican Congressmember Mike Waller. The progressive candidates got buried. Kate Connolly won.
On the Republican side, we were watching the 21st District. There was a nasty Republican primary between Anthony Constantino and Assemblymember Robert Smullen. Constantino is an outsider, first-time candidate, and he really ran hard on the endorsement he got from President Trump. Smullen is a Marine veteran and legislator. He had support from state and local Republicans in the North Country District. Constantino won big. It's a sign that in Republican circles, Trump's endorsement is still as good as gold. Political consultant Bradley Honan explained that even though New York is a blue state, that megaphone could have an impact in the general election as well.
He is, for better or worse, able to direct endorsements to electoral outcomes.
We'll have to see how things play out.
Talk soon, Jimmy.
That was New York Public News reporters Samuel King and Jimmy Vielkind.
A community in Washington County has received $1 million in federal funding for brownfield cleanup. According to the Glens Falls Post-Star, the village of Greenwich will use the money to clean up the Dumbarton site. It was used for textile and paper manufacturing from the 1800s until 2002, when a fire destroyed the buildings and left piles of debris and concrete. Brownfields are properties where contamination poses risks to the environment and public health, limiting future use of the sites. Cleaning up these fields can help prepare them for reuse and redevelopment. The federal funding is part of a larger $14 million pot of money recently announced by U.S. Senators Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand. Along with the cleanup in Greenwich, the funding will also go towards a dozen other brownfield cleanup projects across the state.
On the eve of America's 250th birthday, a prominent portrait of a founding father is back on display at the state capitol. The massive portrait of George Washington underwent a year-long restoration. Samuel King with the New York Public News Network has more on the work that went into conserving the historic portrait.
The 8-foot portrait looms over the State Street lobby at the Capitol next to the information desk. The portrait, by artist Ezra Ames, dates to 1813 and has been on display in various locations ever since. Joseph Madeira with the Office of General Services says its current, very busy location led to challenges.
For example, the temperature fluctuates quite a bit, the humidity changes quite a bit, and all of those changes have an impact on the canvas. And so we monitor these things very closely, and occasionally we have to do some work to make sure that this is preserved for future generations.
So George went away for about a year to the Williamstown and Atlanta Art Conservation Center, where the team added things like UV protection and restored the frame. Executive Director Brian Greenfield says it's incredible to see the work back on display.
Bringing its civic purpose back to the painting as well. That's kind of the last piece of this project in conservation that gives it so much power.
State historians say they hope the portrait inspires curiosity and reflection as America celebrates its 250th birthday. The nearby New York State Museum is also opening the Revolutionary New York exhibit on July 1st, honoring New Yorkers who took part in the revolution and those who worked to make its promises real. In Albany, I'm Samuel King for the New York Public News Network.
And in North Country baseball, the Malone Border Hounds beat the Saranac Surge at home on Saturday and Sunday. And the North Country Thunderbirds and the Tupper Lake River Pigs split their series over the weekend. The teams are off today. Tomorrow, the River Pigs play the Surge at 3 o'clock at Petrova Field, and the Thunderbirds play the Border Hounds at 5 at Veterans Field in Malone. This is NCPR. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8:22. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Stick around after the show for Bird Note coming up at 8:42. With our eyes to the skies, sunset in Harkness is at 8:43 tonight. And there's a full moon tonight. It's the strawberry moon.
It's going to be a hot week this week. Highs today, it's going to be the coolest today of the entire week. Highs today around 80 degrees under sunny skies, but then becoming warmer and more humid as the week continues. A chance of showers and thunderstorms tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, with highs reaching into the 90s on Wednesday and Thursday, even almost near 100 degrees for you folks near in the Glens Falls, Saratoga, Lake George area. Today, though, at last check, it was 72 degrees in Fort Drum and Plattsburgh, 63 degrees right now in Saranac Lake. 20 degrees in Brockville, Ontario, 69 degrees in Malone, and 65 degrees in Chestertown.
Nearly 200 years ago, the religious order of the Society of St. Edmund was founded in France. Now it's coming to an end. Father David Thoreau is the vice president of the Edmundite mission at St. Michael's, a college founded by the order in Colchester, Vermont in 1904. He said that the society's members have dwindled over the years, so they've opted to enter into what's called completion. They're no longer accepting new members, and the order will cease to exist when the last surviving member dies or renounces his vows. Thoreau spoke with Northward's podcast host Mitch Teich about what it means to be working toward completion.
Who was St. Edmund, and what is the Edmundite order all about?
Okay, I suppose it's quite by accident that we have the name St. Edmund. We were founded back in 1843 in France at a Cistercian abbey in Pontigny, France. And in the abbey is the body of St. Edmund. He was buried there. But he's an English archbishop. And he's the only English archbishop who was buried outside of England. And he was declared a saint in 1247, quite soon after. And he did a lot to reform the church in England at the time under him.
What was it that drew you to the order?
Oh, me? I've always had a sense that I was called to be a priest from a very early age in grade school. I had this sense that I wanted to be a priest. I was very impressed with one of the priests in the parish. He had said something one day when I was serving Mass, after Mass, and he had told me, if I could be half the man my father was, I'd be doing very well. And I never could figure out why he said that to me. But it very so impressed me, or I suppose it pressed on me in a sense. But I said, that's what I want to be, a priest. And, so I had those leanings very early on. I wanted to go off to a high school seminary. And my parents were agreeable to that. Although my mother later on said, if she had thought about it again, she probably would not have let me go. But I'm very happy that she did. And so I wanted to go to minor seminary. I decided to go with the Edmundites.
Between the time that you were in seminary and you found this community, and today, what has happened to the Order of St. Edmund that we're now sitting here and talking about its completion?
Yeah, when I joined, we were 120 or so, more. We had a lot of seminarians. Things were thriving. The Second Vatican Council had happened, and the Catholic Church was changing in very different ways. And I think a lot of people were beginning to say, well, I can be a Catholic and I can minister in the Catholic Church without being a priest or without being a nun. Those kind of realities were hitting the Catholic Church. And then there was a shift in culture in the United States in the late 60s with the sexual revolution, with the Vietnam War, and all these kinds of things. The numbers start going down. And obviously, it's not just the Edmundites, but that's consistently across the board. Even the Jesuits in the United States are feeling the pinch in terms of finding men to be able to do what they do. So, it's hitting across the board in the United States. Anyway, we've come to the point where our membership is so elderly. I'm here, I'm 78 going on 79, and I'm still in the bottom part of our community. We have to say to ourselves, we have right now 19 members. Of those, most are in their late 70s, going into their 80s. We have 2 members who are very young, or younger, 135 and 162. But everyone else in their 70s and 80s. And the canonical question comes, how are you going to be able to administer this group if so many are elderly and really no longer capable of doing it? How can you have a superior general and a general council who's going to be able to do this? You need 4 general counselors. If the membership is such that you don't have people who can do it. So, you have to make a decision. Reality strikes. And we made the decision to complete. It doesn't mean that we go out of existence right now, but it means in time we are not accepting any new vocations. They weren't coming our way anyway. That's the reality. We're going to do what we can to establish our works so that they are set up for the future without us. And we are working our way towards leadership that can help us. A lot of religious communities who go to completion eventually get an individual from outside the community who can manage affairs. We've informed Rome, which we have to do. And so, we've taken all of these steps because of reality. But again, it's what we have to face, and it's what's happening.
Well, and I gather the notion of completion is also, if I'm not mistaken, sort of a philosophical point that the order has been able to do what it set out to do. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people appreciate that. They think that religious communities in the Catholic Church go on forever, and some have. The Benedictines, God bless them, 1,500 years of existence, and the Jesuits are still strong. And a lot of religious communities are strong outside the United States, and has a lot to do with demographics, and also has a lot to do with in terms of cultural developments and all the rest. You come to the point that you realize we can no longer do this. But that's happened consistently in the history of the Catholic Church. Communities come into existence for a reason, and as you're implying, they've done what they're supposed to do, and now that no longer really exists. We were founded to re-evangelize France. Well, we left that a long time ago. Now, we talk about ourselves as being where the church might not otherwise be. And we have done that. We've been down the south working with African Americans where the normal Catholic Church would not. We've gone to Venezuela, worked with the poor. So we've been places where the church needs to be. In Vermont, we founded St. Michael's College because the bishop asked us to, because there was a need for a Catholic college. And we had experience in France of doing that.
So, I mean, we've gone where the church asks us to do. But at this point, our institutions can survive without us. And we don't have the manpower anymore to do it. And so, that's the reality that you have to live with. And you make a decision to enable those works that you have to continue without you.
Father David Thoreau is the vice president of the Edmundite mission at St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont. He spoke with Northword's host, Mitch Teich. That's it for the show. Stick around for news headlines from NPR coming up next.
I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Be well.